All right, it's working. All right, I just want to see that real
I
quick.
feel like I'm in my living room here.
So Brian Patrick Gordon, chiropractor, Jersey City, New Jersey. I was just thinking about one of the last conversations I had with Pasquale was he just said to me, you have to go beyond everything you've ever learned. And that's quite a statement. And I really think, for me, that's what chiropractic helps me do. It helps me just process whatever I need to process, and then I can move on to the next level of understanding. And I think about a guy like D.D. Palmer. He was living his life. He was a very bright guy, very well-read man, extremely intelligent guy. And then he receives this thing from the spiritual realm, from a guy named Jim Atkinson through a spiritual medium. And then he starts sharing it with the world. And he wrote that book, the first book, and he says, I'm really not ready to write this book, but he put it out. And I really believe that he had to hold back because I think he wrote the world wasn't ready for what he had to really share. And I got a statement over there, and it's basically he's just saying, in the future after I'm gone, I would like to be the medium through which the new understanding of what chiropractic really is comes through. And that's really what, for me, self-centered is about through Pasquale. It's about us taking all these things and just going beyond everything and going on to the next. And that helps every person who comes into us with their lives. So that's it for me. I would like to
Any questions for Brian? When you said go beyond, Brian, can you be a little more specific what you mean by going beyond?
To me, it's like, all right, I graduated school in 1996. I had a certain understanding of words, of just my life in general. I look at myself now, which is 29 years later, I think I've gone beyond my understanding of things at that time. I don't have an example for you.
Right, okay.
But I understand things in such a way where I know I did not. I'm being honest, I did not 29 years ago. And that's how I look at that. And I have to allow myself to do that. Instead of, I've noticed there are people, they just keep saying the same thing over and over again with the same, they haven't allowed themselves to go beyond that statement or even what those statements mean to them. I don't want to never want to be stuck. Just keep moving forward. Anyone else? Okay. One more time, anyone else? That's it for me, so thank you. The floor is open for whoever would like to come up.
Yeah.
Bob one.
Good evening, everybody. Bob Watton, Brooklyn, New York. Yeah, I just wanted to say I have a patient who I started telling him about Harvey Lillard, and he's from the background of African American. And I was telling him about how one time during the pandemic, I called up the NAACP, and I was telling them about Harvey Lillard and suggesting like maybe he should be part of Black History Month,
Right.
maybe to include him, and I just got crickets on the other end. So I was telling him about this. I don't know why I brought it up to him, but something I guess just kind of my inner voice said to mention it to him. So it turns out he's a member of the NAACP, and he said he knows the people who are the higher ups. So I sent him some information on Harvey Lillard, and I'd like to do a follow-up with him because the last couple of times he came in, he never said anything about it, after I sent it to him. So I should just ask him, hey, did you ever get a chance to check out the information from him and maybe pass it on to them? Because I would like to see him included in that. That's it.
Would anyone like to ask Bob Watton anything? Anyone? Well, Bob, when did you say this to the gentleman who came to your office? Is recently?
It's about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to ask Bob Watton anything? Well, Have you done your own research about Harvey Lillard, maybe more about his background? Or was that hard to find?
No, I've done somewhat, and one of the interesting things I came across that he's actually buried in Seattle in the same cemetery as Bruce Lee.
Oh.
And one of the things that came to me with that, because I remember Pasquale was talking about how Harvey Lillard, you know, the name Harvey means the warrior. So you got, you know, two warlike figures or warriors, you know, strong type of people that are buried in the same cemetery.
Anyone else like to ask Bob Wyman anything? Anyone? Let me see if no? All right, Bob. Excellent.
Right, thank you.
I like that. Excellent. Phil Rocco.
Anybody else?
They're up. They have a
Okay,
choice.
Phil Bracco, chiropractor, originally born in Brooklyn, but practicing in Staten Island. And, you know, I was wondering, like, Dee, here he comes with this idea, right, of chiropractic, and how it was so unique and so different than anything else at that time. It seems like medicine back then was probably treating people's symptoms with all different types of various pills, potions, blah, 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 right? And here comes Dee, and I think that, from what I read, he wasn't looking at it like trying to treat diseases, but improving, you know, the whole person. And it took on like a whole new meaning, something completely different. And I think probably at that time, people maybe could not accept that. And then just what Brian said a few minutes ago, that everything is changing and that he doesn't want to be stuck in one position, or one place, excuse me. So here we are, how many years later, since 1895, I don't know, whatever. Chiropractors are still talking about the same thing. You know, it's always like, it's just different words, but everybody says basically the same thing. So, are we going to be stuck here, or are we going to change and go beyond, like Brian said? Now, going beyond is not easy. It's not an easy job. You got to really put your mind to it. You got to want to do it. Pasquale wanted more. He wanted to go beyond what it was, and he put his whole life into it. I remember he said to me that the hardest thing he ever had to do was to give up his practice, and stop seeing patients and change it to going beyond, if you want to call it that, with chiropractic. So I think here at the Self Center, we're pushing that. We want to go beyond. Every week someone gets up and gives a talk, and it's always something a little further down the road. And I think we're getting there. It's not the same old story over and over again. So for everybody out there, I just want to thank you for coming to the Self Center. And for all of us, it was meant for us all to be here. We've been guided here, and here we are for a reason.
Nothing? All right. Thank you, Phil. Would anyone like to ask Phil anything? Anyone? Anyone?
What street did you grow up on in Brooklyn?
Oh, I grew up off of Coney Island Avenue and Avenue Z, Y and Z, East 11th Street.
So that's Sheepshead Bay?
Yeah. Are you familiar with that area?
Sure.
You know where the schoolyard is? Right on Z and Coney Island Avenue? There's like a school.
I didn't pay attention, like when I go down there, I didn't notice.
I learned a lot of stuff in that school.
That he still uses.
Let's not talk about that.
Anyone else like to ask Phil anything? That's for the after. Anyone else like to ask Phil anything? Nancy Brown.
Hey, Nancy.
Yeah, hi Phil. What would be the next step for you in order to go beyond?
That's a good question. my next step is trying to incorporate or to express chiropractic to people in a way that they could feel like chiropractic is love, and it's just it encompasses them when they come in the office. And in chiropractic is dedication. Chiropractic is caring, concern. You put all those things together. I want the patients to feel that. I want to go beyond so that I can give them more. And as far as understanding goes, there's a spiritual aspect to chiropractic, and I think that we're trying to go down that road where we can learn more from our spiritual friends, as Pasquale would call them.
Anyone else like to ask Bob? I mean, anyone else like to, excuse me, feel anything? Anyone? All right, Phil, great, excellent. One. All right, so all the people, Fernando's going to be the featured speaker.
Maybe Nancy wants to talk.
So we have available either Sora, Nancy, or Miss Victoria with the K would like to speak. You don't have to, but you have the opportunity. So if you want to just alert, just give me the heads up. Nancy Brown.
Yeah, hi, I'm sorry I logged on a little bit later. It was a little challenging, but I'm glad to be on and with everybody. I just wanted to say that there are a lot of changes going on energetically in the world, and I've been talking with my own chiropractor, Christina, here in Florida about it. There's actually astrologically and something about a comet that's coming near to the Earth. Over the next 3 months, it's going to be kind of rocky, and people really need to be centered and be in a state of inner peace, and like Phil says, that love that they need to feel. And so there's a lot of up and downs, and my concern, and I was talking with my chiropractor about this, is that people are self-medicating, taking diet medication, all kinds of things. And it's because the frequency is going so much quicker, and in order to keep up with that, some people don't really understand what's happening. And so I think the chiropractor's office actually becomes an oasis for that love and authenticity, where they can feel like it's real, like this is somebody who's really here for my highest good, for my health, for my well-being, for my spirituality. So I think it's really important to be very vigilant with what people are going through and really watchful and aware, especially in the next 3 months. I think we're going to be in a much more optimistic phase in 2026, but for right now, we all have to keep an eye on our people that we're helping. That's all I want to say.
Okay. Would anyone like to ask Nancy Brown anything? Anyone? One more time. Anyone? All right, Nancy. Thank you very much. We're giving a big clap for Nancy. Now, we either have Sora or Victoria if you want. I don't know. Sora is on. But did you fall asleep, Sora? Oh, maybe.
Nothing to say, thanks.
Okay. She's away.
We heard you.
All right, Victoria, do you want to say anything? You don't have to. I'm just giving you an opportunity. No? All right. We're going to bring up the featured speaker, Don Fernando Mendez, chiropractor from Brooklyn, New York.
All right.
And born and raised there.
Good to see my wife smiling there. I feel like I'm in my living room. So it's good to hear everybody talking today, because what I'm going to share is kind of what I'm working on. Place I'm at with chiropractic. So when that person gets on the table, I just think now, breathe upon these bones and pause. Okay, now I'm going to explain what that means to me, how I got to that conclusion. I'm trying to keep it really simple. Breathe upon these bones and pause. And when I pause, then I go. Meaning, I give the adjustment. That's why I say breathe in, breathe out, and in that pause, you serve the person. You could equate that to the moment somebody hits the baseball, when a football goes through a certain space that it has to get through, when somebody's running and they get through a hole. We've referred to that moment as like the pause as the magic land, or in the movie Harvey when the clock stops. I'm going to go further and further into this tonight. So, breathe upon these bones and pause. Where did I come up with that? So, previously I would just think when I was with a person and I had to kind of get myself ready to take care of them, I would say, okay, I really want to help this person. Whatever forces there are to help me or with this person, I hope they appear right now. If it's our spiritual friends, if it's God, the Holy Spirit, I'm kind of welcome them to come into the space. And I got the idea of breathing upon the bones from Ezekiel, right? I've talked about that up here before. That passage from Ezekiel 37, 1 to 14. And this is, obviously, breathe upon these bones is a very condensed version. The other version I had that kind of explains it more thoroughly is I wrote down, come, Holy Spirit, from the four winds and breathe upon these dry bones. So Ezekiel was a prophet in the Old Testament, and he was speaking with God, and God said, he marched them into this valley full of dry bones, and he said, you're gonna help us bring these people back to life by putting the Spirit into them. And the whole Bible, the whole New Testament's all about that, us gaining the Holy Spirit, and that's what we have with us now. And when we're taking care of people, I truly feel that power is coming through. Whatever name you want to put on it. Dee Dee did a good job, and Pasquale, always putting different names on these things. I think Dee Dee said he couldn't refer to really God in his time, so he used the word universal intelligence. And spirit as the innate intelligence. But breathe upon these bones. The Holy Spirit can just be thought of as the animating force, that breath. So I've cut everything down just to the breath part. To express that power we're feeling and the power that's getting released in there. One of the best examples I've ever heard was a chiropractor called Fred Schofield. He was a Palmer guy. He was a rugby player. He was South African, so I'm wearing my South African jersey here tonight. And he explained that power. He said he would take his kids out to Hawaii or Indonesia, and they'd see these really big waves where the surfers were on. And he would say, you see that power? That's like the power of the adjustment. He said, when you saw those waves coming down and you were close to them, you felt the whole environment change. The pressure was different. The air was fresher. That's just one example of that spirit coming through. So I'm just trying to keep things really, really easy when the people come in. I think, breathe upon these bones, and then I pause and I go into my work. It's funny, a lot of people are on the YouTube seeing chiropractic videos. I don't know what the statistics are, I doubt they're real, but just casually, people coming in asking me stuff. I know they sort out some video. Some girl today with the Y strap, that's always a question. I said, no, I don't have that here. But even listening to random sports podcasts, I don't know how many times I've heard the people talking about, they watch chiropractic videos, they like hearing the cracking, Some people like the sound of it. Obviously, we're around it all day. I'm not so much of a sound guy, I'm more of a feel guy. I like getting adjusted, I like the feel of it. But it goes to show, even the sound of it, there's a certain art in chiropractic, that people even appreciate the sound. And again, I like the feel, And when we're taking care of somebody, that's why I would say, you really got to sense it. It's even beyond just feeling the things. Another idea before I had this idea of breathe upon these bones, but I would just try to think, when I'm taking care of somebody, I'm going to keep it pure. I know why I'm here. I'm just trying to help the person out, right? We're not doing anything else complicated. I'm trying to keep it very simple and just take care of this person. And to me, that became, I transformed that into thinking about just staying with a tender heart. Now, what does that mean to me? We see so many people, and when I really reflect on it, the amount of people I see in a day, it's amazing how smoothly everything goes, how pleasant it is, how many different people you get to meet. I almost don't get to appreciate it because it's going so quickly. When you sit back and look at it, you go, sometimes I go, how did the bathroom in my office stay so clean? Like, so many people are cleaning it or something. It's pretty wild. But there are the bad apples, right? Or you're just having a bad day, you had some bad food, or whatever might happen, and sometimes you hit that wall. And I'll give an example. The whole COVID business, there was a toll of just recognizing, wait, how different I am. People with the mask, I don't have a mask, I'm work. It was so odd. It definitely left me feeling distant from the people and having to protect myself because we're so far into them. It became almost like a wrestling match to me. My heart became hardened, and it didn't go well for me. So when I think of being tenderhearted, I think about, why did you start doing this? Again, to help people out. So when I see that person, I say, can you help this person out? After 20 years, thankfully, I can help that person out, There was a time when I knew, I don't have the goods. But now I go, if I don't have them, nobody has them. I can take care of this person, especially with the thought of, I'm just going to let this force come through me. Even getting up here tonight, I was thinking, I don't really want to share every little thing about my adjusting right now because, when it's a vulnerable space, but I go, it's not really about me. Like, chiropractic is not about Fernando and listen to what I do and how I do it. It's something that's accessible to all of us. The other part I was thinking about taking care of the people and keeping it pure, that I've reduced down to this breathe upon these bones and paws, was an idea of giving these people my labor. As much as we like being chiropractors, there is work involved, right? And I owe it to each of the people who come in. And if I stay with that tender heart, I can give it to them, or if I become a little hard-hearted, I pull back. I also owe that person my patience, which is sometimes going quickly, I might lose. And that I equate to the love I'm trying to give this person. But just keeping that in mind, I owe this person my labor and to be patient. But just the idea of being tender-hearted automatically puts me in that space, puts me in the here and now. And ultimately, the ideas I have, or we get to express that every day. The expression, wisdom is doing, so I can see how I act. Or the expression from the song, they say, walk it like I talk it. The other idea that I want to express in that breathe upon these bones idea is I would think, okay, I make sure I prayed or I had pure intentions. And I was thinking, let the magic happen. I had to get out of my head. And that's talking about the last bit. Breathe upon these bones and pause. Meaning, something's going to happen in that space and I just have to be there. In the now. In that pause, there is an act, a movement. You could say that's like a quickening. Another word I saw was like a mercurial action. And I'm using quickening mercurial just to send you back to something that was a different idea. Prior to the Holy Spirit, these ideas were out there in like ancient thought. Of Mercury, of Hermes, of these forces that act very rapidly, that in a twinkle of an eye. And that's what we're kind of doing with the adjustment. Those forces are coming through. So I had the idea of just focusing on breathe unto these bones and pause. When I have something on the table, when I interact with them, I had the idea of just staying tenderhearted and soft. And then I was thinking, outside the office, what am I doing to better myself? And as we were expressing here tonight, I said, I have to really do a better job of presenting the self-centered story. And I had left it at that. And as I was preparing the talk, I came across Luke 4:18-19. And I didn't know, I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about explaining this story. I know we have to get the story out there. And I almost showed up here going into some detailed philosophical conversation. And as I was preparing, I got lost in my own head. I said, it's going to take me like 20 years to be able to explain all this and all these details. I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life grinding away at this while seeing patients to just give like a reply to this book by Joseph Campbell. When I came across Luke 4:18-19, it made everything very simple. And I'll get into the simple part in a second, but I'm going to read that Luke 4:18-19 right now. It says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the contrite of heart, to preach deliverance to the captives and sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of reward." So now I'm going to tell you how I'm going to translate that moving forward into the chiropractic, the self-centered chiropractic story. So the first thing it says here is, "He hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor." Now, Brian wrote something in 2013 that I came across concerning Luke 4:18-19. And he said, the word poor in here, you could look at as just something, people who are simple and non-materialistic. So when I read this, "He hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor," my first message is, we got to keep a simple story, not this convoluted thing. Sometimes in my practice, the reality is, I'm educated. And a lot of people who I see are very blue collar, who probably haven't had much formal education. And that's fine. These people are brilliant. But when I speak, sometimes I can see they're not getting me. And this is just only something I realized in like the last 15 or 18, 20 after 15 years, I'm going to go, they have no idea what I'm talking about, right? And to be honest, my parents were immigrants. They did not have much formal education, which is, the mind of an educated person, somebody who's somewhat illiterate, obviously they're different. So our message just has to stay simple, and that's the message to all of us. And non-materialistic, which I'll get into in a little bit. Now the third line here says, "He had sent me to heal the contrite of heart." When I see the word heal, it just reminds me, it doesn't matter, as I was saying before, what we say up here. It's really at the moment of the person being on the table. The healing portion of it is the most important part, regardless of what we're going to say to them or anything else. The contrite of heart here. To me, it means that the person has to also be involved here. They have to be willing to take the adjustment at times. Sometimes there's a lot of resistance regardless of how tender-hearted or how charming we are, how nice we are, how much we want to give them. And then I again, owe them that labor to help them get through this process. The next line, "To preach deliverance to the captives and sight to the blind." That's the good news you're giving to people. That's Pasquale wrote in his little card here that we've all seen. "It's only because of this current state of negativity and lack of faith in our own power and existence that we have all this sickness disease, and suffering. So what is this remedy? What is the remedy for a state of negativity? Nancy was talking about this state of negativity. We're like, a feeling of like imminent doom, I think, is in the air. And that's certainly a dis-ease in people. Next line, to set at liberty them that are bruised. That, again, to me, is making sure I take care of them when they're on the table. And finally, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of reward. What does that all mean? That's more of a good news or a message to people. Preach the year of the Lord is the apocalypse or Revelation. I'm not talking about that in my office with people. But just a piece of that to me means that there are times when I have to call people out on certain things. Now, I don't try to say much to many people. The lady today, for example, she had a problem in her leg. I told her afterwards, because she was interested to do some stretching and whatnot. And then she was looking at me and I said, you know, you probably got to lose some weight. Because she was having problems in both legs. A lot of problems. I said, you know you also have to lose weight. She was very overweight. And sometimes I would hold back on that because I feel like she should know. Why am I going to go into that? But there are times when I have to say things to people, make a judgment. Or grab the bull by the horns. And then it says, and the day of reward, which is heaven, which is eternity. So right now what you see out in the world, as Catherine Austin Fitts said, was a lot of hyper-materialists. When you're talking about heaven and eternity, those are really non-materialistic things. It's kind of like the remedy for what we have out there. And that story of eternity is in the religious realm, right? Or the spiritual realm, but what we have at Self Center, what Pasquale left us was something that's really here and now, talking about taking care of people on the table. And it's active when we talk about people going through a metamorphosis. From the ugly caterpillar to the beautiful butterfly, right? That's what we talk about, the metamorphosis. So how do we tell that story? I've seen it for myself, that I try to put together that story about the metamorphosis. I can handle the natural part. I look at chiropractic, I put it into the world of natural health and hygiene. At least in this system we're in now, the bodies we have now. What is natural health and hygiene? Okay, I would say it is scientific, it's humble, it's simple. It'd be the idea of, what do people need? They need clean water, clean food, not to poison themselves, fresh air, rest. And when you bring in the chiropractic element now you're going to go bringing in a spiritual element. We already talked about how chiropractic is an art. Art is inherently transcendent, at least good art. And we get to that part from what Dee Dee said. Chiropractic is based on tone. We're putting the tone into the body's hardware. And that's shaking loose the debris, as we've talked about before. As I was talking about here before, chiropractic can be looked at spiritually when you relate it to the biblical. In the Bible, you see a lot of instances of people laying hands on people. And obviously about the power of the Holy Spirit in people. I have out there right now, I think we have like a story war. People are competing to tell you what's going on. Some people are saying they're on the left, they're on the right. We have all these issues. There were supposedly simpler times when we were all in our little tribes, our local culture, and we were ready kind of in some system that told us, about ourselves. It told us about the people we were around. It told us about the bigger world. It told us about all this whole mystery. But we're not in these little worlds anymore. Every single person is now faced with all these crazy issues. And they're looking for an authority, right? So as we talked before, I think it is our responsibility. We should recognize, there are days when I go, my life is so different, my thought pattern, than most people's. And we should come out here and kind of, as Phil was saying, we should share with these people how we see these things. And I don't think it's I had this talk inadvertently prepared because I was writing stuff down about chiropractic this week because I had time. But I think we should make that, all of us should make that a constant practice. Just to write stuff down, especially if we're going to get up here and talk. If you look at people who perform professionally, they say they're always writing, right? And I don't think it's too much of a stretch for us to kind of jot stuff down that we're thinking, and quickly we'll build something up. And that is what I have to share tonight.
All right, would anyone like to ask Fernando anything? Anyone? Bob Watton?
Is Fred Schofield still around?
He's still around the internet because I saw some of his stuff yesterday on there. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know otherwise.
Anyone else like to ask Fernando anything? Anyone?
So after all that, okay, when the person comes in, are you gonna say to them anything about chiropractic? And what exactly would you say to them if you do say anything? Because you don't have to say anything, it's thoughts. I mean,
I try to have what I'm ready to do. I ask them, what brings you here? And we see how that goes. Sometimes they tell me the car brought me here, my cousin told me to come. So we get to, what's bothering you? And after that, I don't say much. I take care of them. I go from what, if they ask me, and they're not asking me many questions, do I need to come back, things like that. But in the front of my office, I do have information. And, I'm like Brian, I'm by myself in my office. I can't give a lay lecture to everybody who comes in. I try to explain things as best I can, but the information in the front is supposed to be like my support, where if I didn't tell you everything about it, if you pick that up, you should be able to get some information. But I clearly have indicated, hey, pick this up on your first visit. But there's a lot of people I can see who just walk in and walk out, and they're not paying attention to anything. But I think the most important, my focus again is when the person on the table, and I know when I'm in a good place, the adjustment communicates so much to that person in the here and now, and that is really, I don't want to say all I can do, but I gotta get that part done, and then we'll see how everything else plays out with the people. The information's in the front, they can ask me. If I go into your office, Phil, I could find out a lot about it. If I like what that guy has, I could find out a lot about Phil Bracco. I could look up Phil Bracco, I could see if he's written anything, where he comes, people want to find out, they can find out. When I was interested in something, I could find out what was going on, they could find, you probably giving a talk up here, find out more about chiropractic, they're really interested. And I have my little thing with Pasquale up there and stuff, and they sense it. It's a very different space than any other place you're going to go into, I believe. So I hope they get a feel for it. The information is there. They could ask me questions. And at this point, I don't put my faith in them. I just have to do my job and then see what happens. I can't really force them into a way, because that's never worked for me. I just got, if they come along, and try to shepherd them if I can.
Anyone else like to ask Fernando anything? Nancy Brown.
Yeah, hi, thank you for a beautiful talk, appreciate it. Nice to see you. I love what you said about being tender-hearted. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little more, like what happens if you're up against a person who's really hard-hearted and you're coming there with your tenderness and your vulnerability and your love, how does that work out?
I just keep it moving. I just keep it moving. When I was hard-hearted, I had like a 3 strikes and you're out policy. You break 3 rules in here, I'm checking you out. You're gone. And it was really rough but I said, can you take off your belt? They give me a tough time about that. Can you take the gum out? Now I just, if they're, but Nancy, I've had opposition, and then you get, and all I do is, you know what, if they can get on that table, I got them on the table, I'm just going to try to do what I got to do. And even though the person might be saying terrible things, like just off somewhere else, or they didn't want to get on the table, like before those were all things that I was like, I can't even get over this hurt, like I'm not even going to try. But now I just go, and it's amazing how many people would let me adjust them who seemed like they were so resistant. But as long as they're not resisting on the table, and I don't have that thought before they even got out, I was already hard-hearted because I was like, I don't want to I'm going to protect myself. I know I have to protect myself, especially in some positions I'm very vulnerable, but I just make sure I'm relaxed, I'm in control. At that moment, when I'm putting myself into there, I am exposed. But when I know I'm coming from, and I know I'm centered, I feel like if something was going to happen, then it had to happen. But I know I'm controlling myself, and I'm in my best spot to take care of that person. That's all I can control, right? And I want to give it to them, and I'm opening the doors to them to aid them. So.
Anyone else like to ask Fernando anything? Anyone?
Point of information.
Go ahead.
Point of information that, you said it, so I mean, it's nothing that you haven't said, but the people laying on the table, they sense what you're about. So sometimes you don't even have to say words, they just feel it. Good or bad.
Just from changing my mindset, I know where it's like, oh, okay, this is where I was trying to get to, but I didn't know how to get here. And now with my mindset differently, I'm there. It's not like such a struggle. That's the process of becoming a professional and gaining experience, right? I mean, how many forced jobs have there been that I had to go through and learn that that's not the way to do it,
Right.
Or I could try to be. When you're not seeing a lot of people, you can be, hey, what's going on? Hey, your sister, your mother, what's going on with this? And then when you can't, it's just impossible for me to give that kind of, hey, the guy yesterday, he's like, you remember me? I was like, I remember you, but he's like, I was here 2 months ago with my thumb. I said, oh, your thumb, okay, I can't remember every detail, my friend. It'd be great if I could, but I can't. But I can give them my labor at that moment. And I can give them my patience, and if they open up, I can serve them. And it is amazing how many people just come in, whatever. It happens so frequently, it's so common, easygoing now, but to think that all these people walking around, they could just scoot in and scoot out, it could be so smooth. It's really a wonder.
Anyone else like to ask Fernando anything? One more time, anyone? All right, Fernando. Excelente. Great job. That's for Fernando.